So don't get me wrong, I'm actually a fan of fasting for some people. Oftentimes it's a useful tool for weight loss and time management. With that being said, recently there's been a trend of promoting fasting because it increases growth hormone. Growth hormone is responsible for both liberating or breaking down body fat and for increasing protein synthesis. It's not the only hormone that does this, but these are two of its effects. And during a fast, we do see elevated growth hormone levels, and the reason for this is quite interesting. So we actually release a hormone inside of our intestinal tract called ghrelin, and this hormone is released when our stomach does not have food in it, and this hormone is responsible for making us feel hungry. But what ghrelin can also do is bind to the neurons inside of our brain responsible for releasing growth hormone. So quite interestingly, the hungrier we are during a fast, oftentimes this means the more growth hormone we're producing. However, if you ask anyone who's taken body composition scans before and after a fast, there is a noticeable decrease in muscle mass. And the only reason I mention this is because oftentimes this elevation in growth hormone seen during a fast is put forth like it's going to increase our muscle mass because we're not eating. So why does this increase in growth hormone during a fast not allow us to build copious amounts of muscle while we're fasting? This is because growth hormone is one of many hormones being released during fasting, and the majority of the other hormones being released are referred to as catabolic hormones. These include things like adrenaline, cortisol, and glucagon, and these hormones actually increase the breakdown of proteins. So the small increase in protein synthesis we see from elevated growth hormone is not enough to counterbalance the large increase in protein breakdown from the other hormones, which is why simply not eating is not a great way to put on muscle mass. That doesn't mean that this growth hormone release doesn't have other positive effects. For example, this growth hormone release will actually increase a process called autophagy. And autophagy is often referred to as the cellular recycling process. So almost every cell in the body is constantly synthesizing proteins throughout the entire day. And there's many steps to this process just to synthesize one single protein. First, we have to encode a specific region of the DNA. We then have to attach the correct amino acid sequence together. And finally, we oftentimes need to fold this structure of amino acid into the correct form so it can do the job the protein is designed for. And oftentimes these proteins get misfolded. Or maybe they don't have the correct amino acid sequence, and the proteins that we produce become dysfunctional and not useful. And this process of autophagy is actually the process where we break down these proteins into their individual amino acids and try and recreate the protein that's actually functional. And the milieu of catabolic hormones that breaks down these dysfunctional proteins and the increased growth hormone that will allow us to increase protein synthesis does allow us to go through this autophagy process. But as you can see, we're actually breaking down proteins that are already inside of our body to recreate new healthy proteins. And we will lose a few amino acids as a result. So at the end of the day, if all we did was fast and we never ingested any food, we would be at a net loss of amino acids, meaning at the end of the day we would lose whole body protein. But it's important to remember that exercise increases autophagy and growth hormone just as much, if not more, than any sort of fasting. So instead of fasting, we can simply get most of, if not all, the benefits just from exercise, and then ingest protein thereafter to actually shut down this catabolic cascade while still allowing for increased protein synthesis. But these newly synthesized proteins are going to use dietary protein as building blocks instead of the proteins that are already in our body, meaning that at the end of the day we'll be at a net increase in amino acids and whole body protein. So I hope this just gives a little bit of detail as to why fasting will not increase muscle mass any more than if you ate the same food multiple times throughout the day. Rather, fasting may actually increase the amount of amino acids we end up losing at the end of the day. So be careful with fasting too much, and on top of monitoring body fat loss, make sure you're accounting for muscle mass retention.